Oh, and that's a brilliant effort, and they've turned it right around. In the space of a few minutes, Saudi Arabia grab control of the game.
Very happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back to Dawri, this Dawri football podcast. After a short break, we are back, and we hope that you all have a wonderful 2024. It's going to be a very, very busy year on the football front. Of course, the Saudi Pro League went on a prolonged break from December the 30th, with all eyes now turning to the AFC Asian Cup 2023, which kicks off in Qatar on Friday night. 10 Arab teams are taking part in the 24-team tournament, with Saudi Arabia arguably the most fancied of the regional teams. As usual, our new sports editor, Ali Khaled, is with me to discuss all of the continent's biggest tournament. And of course, we'll have our normal update from Khaled Alarafah, who's keeping an eye on Roberto Mancini's Saudi squad. But first, AK, welcome back. Hope it was a good break. You must be really excited for this one, though, the big Asian Cup kickoff.
Happy, great to be back, and Happy New Year to everyone. As you said, yes, I am very excited. I've always loved this tournament, Peter. Obviously, living in this part of the world, growing up here, it's a tournament that I've followed since I was a kid. I still remember very well the first tournament, the first AFC Asian Cup that I remember is 1980, Kuwait winning it. That great. Golden generation team of great, winning it in 1980, beat South Korea in the final. And then, of course, in the 80s, 84 and 88, that's when Saudi Arabia won 2 in a row, their first 2 titles. And it had been like an incredible, improvement by Saudi Arabia from the late 70s and early 80s to being Asian champions in 84 and 88. Of course, they won it again in 1996. I was living in Abu Dhabi at the time, and the tournament took place in the UAE. I remember the final very well. Again, it was Saudi Arabia against the UAE, and Saudi Arabia won on penalties. And that was Saudi Arabia's last win, since then, which is surprising considering, how well they've done in World Cup, qualifying to World Cup finals, generally being one of the best teams in the region, but they haven't won it since. And obviously they lost that 2007 final to Iraq, the miraculous win for Iraq in Jakarta, it was in the middle of the war. Which obviously become legendary since then. It's I was lucky in 2015, Pete, to go to Australia and cover the tournament. And I was covering the UAE team, and they did incredibly well. Followed them all month. They got to the semi-final. They lost to Australia in the semi-final, but that was a great team led by Omar Abdurrahman, Ali Mabkout, the golden generation, as we call them. Yeah, they never went on to be as good as they were at that tournament. We expected maybe they'll have a good shot at getting to the World Cup. They never did, but that was a great team. And of course, the last tournament was held in the Emirates, and Qatar won that. Saudi Arabia, not been, great in the last 2 tournaments. They obviously knockout stage exit last time round. I think, a lot more will be expected of them this year. They're the league obviously is now one of the top, if not the top league in Asia, of course, but probably people talk about it in terms of being one of the top leagues in the world. So, and of course, the clubs have been doing really well in recent times. So perhaps it's time that, Saudi Arabia won it again.
Step up to the plate for KSA. Great stuff. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, the league is on a break. So Saudi Arabia have already played the first of 3 warm-up matches. We spoke to our man Khaled Alarafah earlier, and he had this to say.
Hi, Ali. Hi, Peter. How are you guys? So before the kickoff of the Asian Cup Qatar, the Saudi Arabian national team have decided to do their camp in Doha and play 3 friendly matches. Actually, one of them was played already, and it was against Lebanon. The Saudis won 1-0. The goal came by Firas Al-Brekan. We weren't able to watch the match, guys, because the match was closed for the media, and as well, no TV channels covered it by an order from Roberto Mancini. All we know is that Firas Al-Brekan scored the goal, and Roberto plays with two different lineups. Each of them played a full half. That's the first match. They still have two matches to come, one against Palestine and then Hong Kong before the kickoff of the Asian Cup, while Saudi Arabia will play their first match against Oman on the 16th of January. I'll get back to you, Ali, after the next match against Palestine. Back to you.
Thanks to Khaled. Interesting that Mancini is keeping his preparations secret, AK.
Yeah, exactly. We wonder if they'll be the same in the coming games as well. But, one thing, obviously, that came out of this match is that Firas Al-Braikan of Al-Ahli scored the winning goal. We mentioned a few weeks ago that, as we have really throughout the season, that the issue with Mancini's squad is that there's not as much firepower up front. Firas Al-Braikan seems to have really into a bit of form at the right time. Done really well for Al-Ahli because, even Roberto Firmino really hasn't been firing at all since the opening weeks of the season. There's even been talk of Firmino possibly leaving. Al-Braikan is a massive plus for Mancini. Obviously, we didn't get to watch the highlights or how the team played, but that would be a massive positive, I think, for them. And like I said, I think a lot of people have been saying they massively over-rely on Salam Ad-Dosari for goals. Saleh Al-Shehri, who scored against Argentina, as we remember in the World Cup, obviously is an option. But there's really not many Saudi forwards who start for the clubs, So that's a big plus, I think, from that match for Azerbaijan. And we'll see, obviously, how the other friendly matches, the two remaining friendly matches go before the big kickoff.
Awesome, can't wait. Perfect time to bring in our special guest, Matt Monaghan, to discuss the chances of our teams and indeed the rest of the Arab nations taking part. Matt, great to see you. Excited as us for the big kickoff?
As always, I think Ali's given the perfect build-up. I think it's a tournament, the Asian Cup, that I don't think it's appreciated enough as it should be around the world. And with Asian football going from strength to strength in recent years, I think this is just a real tantalising tournament.
Matt, good to see you again. Listen, let's get straight into it. We've got quite a lot to cover. We've got 10 Arab teams. I want to start with Group F, the last group, because Saudi Arabia is in it. And obviously Oman is in it as well. We've got two Arab teams in that one. Look, Saudi Arabia surely will have to be one of the favorites for the tournament, of course. And you'd expect them in a group that also has Thailand and Kazakhstan, that to go through as group winners. We've already mentioned, the forward issue, about the over-reliance on Salam Ad-Dosari and hopefully Al-Braikan coming in and taking some of the heat off, So how do you see Saudi's form and then, going into the tournament, their chances?
I think this is such an inviting tournament because I think a big issue for Saudi Arabia is, I guess, it's building momentum after that real, sticky start for Roberto Mancini at the helm. And that, I think the recent friendly 1-0 victory in the recent friendlies as well against Jordan against Lebanon, hasn't helped. I think it's time to really get going in the tournament. They can get a few wins under their belt, and it is like you were talking about before. It's a chance to show that other players other than Salam Al-Dawsari can really step up and deliver for the team. It's a pretty young squad. It's a real changing of the guard. I think if you compare, for example, this Saudi Arabia squad to, I'm sure we'll come on to this later, the Qatar squad that's been selected for this tournament, it is quite different to the last World Cup. I guess with a Thailand team that's had change of management, I think I'm reading Thai media seems to be quite a disruptive start to the tournament. So I think they've got a real good chance of reeling off 3 victories and going from there basically.
Yeah, moving on to Oman. Like I said, we expect Saudi Arabia to. Honestly, it would be a disaster not to go through. But you'd expect them to go through with 3 wins, as you said. Oman as well. This is a tournament. That some of the third place teams will get a chance as well. So you'd expect Oman will have a chance as well.
Yeah, I think the big unknown in this group, and this especially applies to Oman, I think, is what type of performance we'll see from Thailand. They feel like a team that's very much peaked and is coming off the other side. Also, a recent change of management, and Oman, you feel, can maybe take advantage of that. I don't know the exact mathematics, but would one win be enough potentially to get through as a third place team? If so,
almost,
they would fancy that.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, you're right.
And then I think with Kyrgyzstan as well, again a team that feels there's the potential there to get points. I think Oman, the big strength that Oman have as well is the man in charge, Branko Ivankovic, and that, a veteran coach, also someone who knows Asian football intimately as well, a former Iran manager amongst others. And this could be the chance. It's quite a few years for Oman since obviously that Gulf Cup success a few years ago. You've still got a few of the names that will be familiar to followers of Middle Eastern football, such as Al Rashidi in goal. There's a lack of real quality, but I think a collective spirit, and it's something that Branko Ivankovic he's been in the helm now since 2020, I think, if I remember correctly. And there's a chance, isn't there? I think they would take that with this group of players. Yeah.
Let's just go back to Group A, Qatar's group. Or obviously, Qatar, kick off the tournament on Friday. I mean, surely they can't be as bad as they were at the World Cup. That was a massive, what a letdown that was from Qatar. And obviously, let's not forget, they come in as the reigning champions, as the holders.
Yeah, of course.
You'd expect them at the very least to reach the second round.
Yeah, I think with Qatar, it's obviously very interesting, the change of management. Carlos Queiroz being unceremoniously exiting, Tintin Marquez coming in, someone who's done really well with Al Rakhra in recent seasons. And it'll be interesting to see how that change works. I think we cast your mind back, you were talking about earlier, to the 2015 Asian Cup. We had that loan move for Khaled Alarafah to Saudi Arabia. That did not work out at all well. Qatar, will that be a similar impact? I don't know. If you look at the squad, it's pretty similar, isn't it, to the team that obviously did so well in 2019. We're so disappointed in 2022. I think you've only really got the likes of Lucas Mendes, the former Marseille defender who's now been naturalised. He's got a few caps recently. I think with Qatar, obviously I was feeling a bit better about them, and then they lose that friendly to Jordan recently. I mean, that was a very worrying result. The group is kind. The group is definitely kind. Yeah. And you would really hope that professional pride kicks in for the likes of Akram Afif and Almoez Ali, who were, for me, by a distance, the most disappointing players in the World Cup 2022. I'm talking for every nation. I expected so much of that, and they were terrible. I think this is the chance for a bit of redemption.
To be honest, Matt, it's a really, really good point you make. That I think what was incredibly frustrating about Qatar and in the World Cup was that it's their two best players that they were the most disappointing ones. It wasn't even a case of a few players performed and some of them didn't live up to it or couldn't reach that level and all that, or that if Almoez Ali and Akram Afif really sort of tried to drag everyone and the rest weren't up for it. It wasn't even a case of that. It was the fact that those two were the two biggest disappointments.
And also, there's no Montari to rely on now. He's injured out the tournament. I think he scored against Senegal, didn't he, in the World Cup? And so there's more pressure on those two for this tournament. Obviously, it's on home soil, isn't it? So what element does that have? It didn't work well for them a year ago. But let's see if it makes a difference this time.
As you say, the group is slightly easier. So
the group. There's no Netherlands in this group or Senegal, is there? So it's a different group.
Obviously they've got Lebanon. The group includes China and Tajikistan and Lebanon. So how do you see Lebanon? As again another group with two Arab teams. Lebanon. I personally, as much as I'd love for all Arab teams to qualify, it's not possible. And this could be one of the teams that exits at the group stage.
Yeah, so I'll say with Lebanon, obviously you've had the recent change of management. With Radulovic returning as coach. That was only a few weeks ago. Lebanon, again, a real lack of star quality in the squad, but they were an undefeated start to World Cup qualification in November. That's something to give encouragement. Also beating Jordan in a friendly recently as well. Only narrowly losing to Saudi Arabia as well at the start of this month. So there's something going on there for Lebanon. Again, you feel they're in an Oman situation where if they can get one result, that could really change everything. Yeah. And also, I think it'd be really interesting to see this. I know there's been a bit of attention on Daniel Curry, the Atalante player, that plays in Mexico. How will he do in the big tournament? I know there's been a bit of attention on him in Mexican media. So let's see if he can ignite things in attack for Lebanon.
Yep. Great stuff. Matt, moving on to Group B, one of the more interesting and more intriguing teams, Syria, in a group with Australia, Uzbekistan, and India, and of course they've got Hector Cooper as their coach now. Already, there's he didn't do very well with Egypt or Uzbekistan, but he is obviously a very experienced coach, and already what is it, Omar Asoma issue, not being picked. It's I do find Syria a team that punches above their weights so often, under difficult circumstances, as we know over the last 10-15 years. And what do you think of their chances in a tough group? Actually, I mean, this one there is no with Australia and Uzbekistan, that will be tough.
This is a horrible group, and I really think Cooper's he's taken an enormous gamble in not selecting Omar Al-Samar. I think we saw Al-Samar's reaction as well. I don't think he expected this at all, did he? Yeah. Al-Samar, I think with Ali, I'd say the last decade, alongside Ali Mabkout, the best strikers this region has produced. Still doing okay in Qatar in his mid-30s, Al-Samar as well. It's an enormous statement. I guess it puts more pressure on Omar Kherbin to deliver. Yeah. He has been in exceptional form for Al Wada in the ADNOC Pro League in the UAE. So he's got to get amongst the goals. If Hector Cooper teams are, as we expect, it's going to be highly defensive, highly organised. And then maybe he thought that Al-Samar just couldn't deliver that anymore for the team. I think a bellwether of where Syria are at was that 5-0 thrashing by Japan in World Cup qualification back in November. They're not a team to compete. They're not the team that almost made the World Cup a few years ago. They're very much on the other side of that. And like you say, this group it's a horrible group, isn't it? So I guess the only slither, and I guess it didn't help that Australia did so well at the last World Cup. Historically, Australia haven't done great in the Middle East. Also, Australia were brilliant at the World Cup in Qatar, so maybe the conditions in Qatar favour Australia. Uzbekistan are definitely a team on the up as well. They seem to be back to where you'd expect Uzbekistan to be. So I think this is going to be a real struggle. I guess you look at that India game and can they nick a draw? Can they beat India and can they nick a draw against either Uzbekistan and Australia?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, probably this group, Syria will rely on that. Can the one win get you through, somehow? So we'll wait and see. It's a tough one. It's one of the, like I said, for the Arab teams, it's absolutely the toughest draw. In moving on to Group C, it's another tough group, really. I mean, it's Iran. I mean, Iran and Hong Kong with two Arab teams again, the United Arab Emirates and Palestine. The UAE first, Matt. I know you keep a close eye on them, of course. An improvement under Paulo Bento, or shall we say, like Paulo Bento's had a good, is at a good start, and they will go into the tournament pretty confident, I would say. Yeah,
although that perfect, I think it was 6 victories in a row under Paulo Bento, that was snapped in a friendly defeat to Oman, which is that's a bit of a worrying result, because you would, in theory, expect the UAE to be a lot stronger than Oman. I think, and the confidence that if they got into this tournament undefeated under Bento, and the wider picture for the UAE, that in contrast to Qatar, they seem to very much be like Saudi Arabia, in that they've very much transitioned away from a strong team. I think you look in attack, also I think one of the players that could really emerge in this tournament, Ali Salah of Al Wasl in the UAE, someone to keep an eye on that attack. Obviously with Fabio De Lima, Kyle Canedo, Ali Mabkout, there is lots of goals in this team. Very talented players on the bench as well, the likes of Yahya Al Ghassani. As always, you look at the centre-back position, it's maybe not as strong as they would hope it to be. We've seen in previous editions absolute warriors in defence, like Ismail Ahmed and Mohamed Salem. Obviously, they are long gone now after successive semi-final runs for the UAE. So can Khalifa Al Hamadi of Al Jazeera, can he deliver on his promise? I think he was the youngest player for the UAE at the last Asian Cup. Can he really step up to play as well? I think there's definitely reasons to feel a lot more confident about this UAE team than they have done in recent years, because I think we can describe it as a narrow miss for the last World Cup. I think that was an illusion. It was an awful campaign for the UAE throughout. It really was the fact that I think they had enough talented players to get them to that stage, but I think a more organised and cohesive group could have really threatened Australia. They only narrowly lost to Australia. And you feel that if Paulo Bento had been at the helm then, maybe they could have gone further. And that's the hope of Paulo Bento. He didn't do well in the Asian Cup, but he's done well at the World Cup for South Korea. And he's a manager of immense Asian experience now. So I think he can be the weapon and the real chief weapon in the UAE's armour. And you never know. Can they make the last four for a third successive tournament? What an incredible achievement that would be for a nation of the UAE size.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually going to say, Matt, with a favourable, you'd expect possibly Iran to win the group, but with a favourable draw in the round of 16, the quarterfinals at least, is a strong possibility for the UAE.
I think there's no reason not to think that way. I think the one thing we don't know about this team, and which the previous team, I guess under Alberto Zaccaroni and certainly Mahdi Ali, they were able to dig out results when they needed to. We still don't really know that yet about this group of players. There's a lot of youth in this team. It just depends. For example, the big one is obviously Vali Mabkout. Vali Mabkout can go on one of the crazy goal scorer runs we've seen him do before, and that will help. But also there's a proper support cast now with Caio Canedo and Fabio De Lima. They can be regular scorers at this level without question. They can upset nearly every defence in this tournament. So yeah, I think there are reasons to feel quite positive about the UAE. There's just that small little bit of doubt from that friendly defeat to Oman, but it's just a friendly. I think you look at they were excellent. November's World Cup qualifiers, the UAE were excellent in November's World Cup qualifiers, and this feels like a team that could do something. And
there's also, of course, Yahya to keep an eye on, a great talent. We always keep an eye on him. Great stuff. And Palestine, of course, in the same group, another team that, punches above its weight in general for obvious reasons again. And, this one's going to be tough, I think. There again, there's always the possibility, and they've got some good players. Star striker are they, the back, but it's going to be a tough one. Do you reckon?
Yeah. They've never got through the groups, and it looks like it'll be a real tough ask to do that this time. Again, I think they're another nation that can probably feel encouraged about the last competitive outings. A narrow World Cup qualifying defeat to Australia in Kuwait, that 0-0 draw with Lebanon in Sharjah. I think with Palestine, there's obviously the situation in the country at the moment. Will that be a distraction, or will that even bring the squad further together? It's impossible to predict. Then with the bag as well, obviously he's done a pretty good start to life in Belgium with Charleroi after doing really well in Portugal. So if he can get amongst the goals. Again, it's a team. So say they beat Hong Kong and then they manage to nick a draw against Iran or the UAE. It's again, you could be in the mix for a third place finish.
Yeah, and moving on to Group D, Matt. Again, one Arab team in Group D, Iraq. They're with Japan, Indonesia, and Vietnam. Again, not an easy group by any stretch. And of course, with Iraq, forever. Will be compared to the heroes of 2007, the Lions of Mesopotamia. That miracle we mentioned earlier in the pod. How do you see this one? Again, you think there's, at the very least, they'd be looking at that round of 16.
I think one of the curiosities of the international fixture list as well of today in World Cup qualifiers, we've got the battered Indonesia 5-1 and then won 1-0 in Vietnam. So they're very encouraging results against two of the teams that they now face in Qatar. I don't think any team in international football wants to play Japan at the moment. I include even European teams, and that's what they've done to Germany and teams like that. So Again, I think this is probably the best. Would you say, I mean, this Iraq squad is maybe even better, or certainly not incomparable to the 2007 team? I guess after years and years of injury worries, you've got Mohammed Ali. He's back home in Iraq. He's playing now. He's in this squad. He was one of the standout players, wasn't he, at the last Asian Cup? It's not worked out for him in the intervening period, but he's there. And obviously they come off the back of that incredible and encouraging Gulf Cup success under Jesus Casas.
Absolutely.
You've got a squad now as well. They're really dipping into the diaspora. So you've got, I think it's less than 10 of this squad are domestic based. You've got players playing in Europe now regularly. So this is a strong squad for Iraq, and I hate to use that term. It's not one that's worked out well in recent international tournaments, but dark horses.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you touched there on the Gulf Cup. They must have, obviously a lot of confidence from winning that against. Okay, some of the teams were clearly some of the GCC teams in that tournament clearly not as strong as they will be in this tournament. But still, it's a trophy, and Iraq. We mentioned a few of those teams that possibly who have problems, who've had political issues and all that. It's not always easy for them, and they punch above their weight. We mentioned Syria, we mentioned Palestine. Iraq certainly fall into that category. But yeah, that Gulf Cup win was very encouraging, and again. We keep maybe it's not fair by all of us. We keep referring to that 2007, but it's almost impossible not to. It was such an incredible victory in Jakarta. So and of course you touched there on Japan. They've got to be. We'll get to at the end of this review. We'll get to who we think are the favorites for the tournaments, and surely Japan is right up there. And Group E, South Korea, Malaysia, Bahrain. And Jordan, another group with two Arab teams. So that's a tough group as well. How do you see first, I suppose, Jordan's chances?
Jordan, well, I think there's one man that we're obviously going to talk about straight away here. Musa Al-Tamari is in the form of his life with Montpellier since moving to Ligue 1. For Jordan, I mean, they've come into the tournament with quite a long stretch of bad results before, beating Qatar in a friendly. Jordan, I guess, 2 times quarter-finalist in the Asian Cup. And looking at the group, again, you actually would say that I think South Korea obviously are the comfortable favourites in this group. Malaysian football is going from strength to strength, but how will that translate into a tournament in the Middle East at the moment in the part of the season? So I think that Jordan can feel that, particularly with Al-Tamadi, that they can do something in this tournament. Maybe they could even finish second in this group.
Yeah, I mean he's been absolutely incredible. Obviously over the last few years, 2-3 years, he's been on the up and up. He's 26. I'm not quite sure his age. But he is quite experienced. He's experienced in Europe now, and just blistering pace on the right. A few people have compared him to Mohamed Salah around the time when Salah started to improve around the time he joined Liverpool. So really keep an eye on him. And also, look, I mean, I actually mentioned Jordan ahead of Bahrain, because we've been kind of in each group, mentioning the favorites. But of course, Bahrain are ranked 86 in the world. I think one higher than Jordan, I believe. So if we think Jordan have a good chance, Bahrain as well.
Yeah, I think with Bahrain as well, Juan Antonio Pizzi at the helm. Someone who was at the last Asian Cup with Saudi Arabia. They didn't do very well in that tournament, but Pizzi's obviously been to the World Cup as well before then with Saudi Arabia. Helio Sousa did such wonderful things, and again, somebody who's enjoyed success in the Gulf Cup with a young team. And I guess with Bahrain, they've got the 2 standout players, the players that play abroad, with Ali Medan, who has been a great addition to UAE's ADNOC Pro League in the last few seasons. Abdullah Yusuf Halal, the very tall, physically dominant striker who's back in Czech Republic at the moment. So those two can link up well together. Again, I think this group is really up for grabs, isn't it? The South Korea, I mean, 90% they will win all 3 games, South Korea, but you feel that there really is a real scrap on to finish second and third behind them. Yeah. And you could also, because of how close those teams are, the third place team could end up getting quite a few points.
Yeah. Great stuff, Matt. Superb, previewing as always for you. Pete, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah,
Put him on the spot.
Jets, I don't think we could get a more comprehensive roundup of 24 teams who are going to contest this tourney. So fantastic insight from both Matt and Ali there. So thanks to you both. But yes, you are right. It is prediction time. 2 for you both. Starting with you, Matt. First up, Qatar, Lebanon in the opener. How do you see that going? And if we can get your addition of who's your shout for the title?
So, Qatar, Lebanon. It really should be Qatar, shouldn't it? But I guess Qatar is just, there's just so many intangibles about this Qatar team now. Nobody, apart from Xavi, expected them to win it in 2019, famously. World Cup, people wondering if they could even maybe get through the group, and they were appalling. I think nothing short of that. We've had the change of management. I've seen Marquez has only had a few friendlies, but Marquez has obviously spent the last few years of his career doing very well with Al Raqqa in Qatar. He's been part of the Qatar system with the likes of Youth, so he knows these players. So yeah, I think they'll comfortably beat Lebanon. I'm not expecting much from Lebanon. In a wider sense, anyone with decent memories remember that a few months ago I picked out South Korea. I thought we're going to do well. I think for South Korea, Klinsmann obviously seems to be clicking a bit now, and then you're having Son and Kim, two absolute undoubted world-class players, best maybe 5 to 10 best players in the world in their position. And in a tournament of the Asian Cup where you can have quite a disparity between abilities among certain players, sure. If Kim and Son produce the levels they can get to, they can drag South Korea along. Overall, obviously, Japan have been the best international football team since the World Cup globally. And I think they will be really inspired to get their hands back on the Asian Cup as well as Japan. So this, obviously, we're the Arab News podcast, and we keep an eye on, obviously, Arab football. But I think those two teams, South Korea and Japan, are comfortably ahead of everyone else. I think it will require something quite special for the likes of Saudi Arabia to manage to get past one of those teams. Because I'm sure at some stage of this tournament that Saudi Arabia are going to have to beat either Japan or South Korea, or maybe even both of them. So let's see how that goes. I think that's a really big ask.
Great stuff. Massive thanks to Matt. Ali, same for you.
Yeah, so can't really argue too much with Matt's predictions there. I think Qatar will beat Lebanon. I don't think they can survive another really bad opening, considering what happened in the massive disappointment of the opening of the World Cup. I think they should be up for it, shall we say? And yeah, I'm going to go for Qatar 2, Lebanon 0. For the tournament, the heart says I want an Arab team to win it. Obviously, I've been watching and covering Saudi football for a long time. The Saudi clubs are doing incredibly well. All 4 are in the knockout stages of the AFC Champions League. Al Hilal have been great in the Champions League in recent times. We could say the Saudi League is probably the best league in Asia. But then when you look at the international teams, Japan in particular, as Matt said, it's really, really tough. It's a case of the heart says, Saudi Arabia for me is the best of the Arab teams. I'd like an Arab team to win it. It's tough to sort of go up against Japan. So I am going to let the heart rule the head in this particular case. I'll go for Saudi Arabia. At some point they're going to have to beat one of those two teams Matt mentioned. But you know what? Mancini won the Euros last time out, no tournament play. Let's hope for an Arab win and for a Saudi Arabia win.
That's a really good point about Mancini as well. Really good point about Mancini after the winning. Yeah. Nobody expected Italy to win the last Euros, and he managed to dig out that incredible tournament for Italy. So yeah, it'd be great if we could do it against Saudi Arabia.
Great note to end on. 2 hearts, 1 head. 2 hearts being Peter Redding and Ali Khaled for Saudi Arabia, and of course the voice of reason and our expert guest. It's why he's with us, the effervescent Matt Monaghan. We will see you next week when the AFC Asian Cup 2023 will be well underway, and we will have all of the details, of course. Until then, see you later.